What I'm looking for is for the girl that's in the house to come out here because I'm going to rip her and kill her. I want to kill her because I have a knife and a gun.
This is Christopher Sums. In 2021, he made his way to a seemingly random home in Las Vegas with terrible intentions.
I just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions. Are you sure? I just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions. Are you sure? What? Are you sure?
The video speaks for itself. It's hard to tell if he's talking to himself or talking to the woman that was home alone at the time. He was arrested the next day after being recognized by Las Vegas resident Karen Stewart. When he was arrested, he referred to himself as the Holy Spirit.
I just have a couple questions for you. Are you sure?
This is one of the strangest copycat crimes you will ever hear about. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City, there was a genuine concern that people would try to copy this attack, and although there were some attempts, most of these people were caught before they did anything. However, there was somebody who successfully stole a plane and flew it into a tower in America. This person was 15-year-old Charles J. Bishop. At the time, he was a student pilot, and on the 5th of January 2002, his instructor left him alone in the plane to do the pre-flight inspection. During this time, Bishop took flight without permission and headed straight towards the Bank of America Tower in Tampa, Florida. He crashed directly into it and was killed in the process. Luckily, there were no other fatalities. Initially, officials ruled out terrorism, but inside the wreckage of the plane, they found a note written by Charles where he voiced support for Osama bin Laden and the 9/11 attacks. He also stated that he was doing this on behalf of Al-Qaeda. All of these insane facts are the reason that
we're asleep, and she gets up to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh man, I have to go to the bathroom too, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom in the main bathroom outside the room. I go out, I come back in, and I'm like, why'd you turn my light on my side of the bed? Like, it's 12, we're going to bed, like we're in bed. She's like, I didn't do it, I thought you did. I'm like, okay, well, somebody's trying to get our attention. My phone rings. It's my little sister. She says, hey, Bob, sorry, are you awake? And I'm like, I am now. I go, my light just came on. She goes, that's why I was calling you. She said, is Nicole there? I'm like, yeah. She put her on speaker. She said, Nicole, I don't want to get personal, but did your mom have miscarriages before you? And she's like, yeah. She goes, I'm seeing 3 people in the room right now trying to get your attention. And they're your 2 brothers and your sister that weren't born.
A group of tourists went missing yesterday on their way to go see the Titanic wreckage, and it's being reported now that a search and rescue mission is underway. So this company called OceanGate, which is based in Washington, operates these vessels that can take groups of up to 6 tourists to go see the Titanic. A ticket goes for $250,000 and the whole voyage takes about 8 days. The trip starts off the coast of Canada and then goes 380 miles to the site and then 2.3 miles below the ocean to the wreckage. Sunday morning, a vessel doing this trip lost contact with the control room an hour and 45 minutes into its dive. The vessels have 96 hours of battery power essentially to keep people alive, but they're saying now that there's only 72 hours left in that battery. They're also now saying that this exact thing happened last summer, but the vessel was only out of contact with the control room for 3 hours. And this one has been radio silent for over 24. But look, a correspondent for CBS said in an article that all these submersives have been kind of janky. So much so that the vessels rarely make it to the Titanic despite being $250,000 per ticket. The search and rescue is underway, so I guess we'll get updates within the next 3 days. So I'm obsessed with the dark side of Disney. And did you know there's a horrible period of accidents at Disneyland that doesn't really get talked about a lot? It's been referred to as the Disney Dark Ages. It was from 1997 to 2003 when this guy, Paul Pressler, was the president of Disneyland. Paul basically decided they were no longer going to do scheduled maintenance on rides. They were only going to fix rides when they were broken. Did it save money? Sure, but this resulted in some of the worst accidents the park had ever seen. One of the worst being that of Brandon Zucker. In 2001, Brandon Zucker was on the Roger Rabbit ride, which was already having maintenance issues. An employee put Brandon on the wrong side of the car, and when he put the lap band down, it didn't close all the way. So at one point in the ride, Brandon tumbled out of his seat and was hit by an oncoming car. The car pinned him and dragged him down the track before anyone could do anything. Also, at the time, Disney employees were not allowed to call 911. They had to call park emergency services, who then called 911, so it took a while for anyone to come get Brandon. He did survive the accident, but he had brain damage so bad he was nonverbal and lost a lot of motor skills for the rest of his life. And eventually he passed away at 13 years old.
Does the name Josie ring a bell?
Yes.
Is he here?
Yes.
Okay. So I decided to just come down and talk to you here. I need to talk to you about an incident where you're my suspect. Okay. Do you have any idea what I'm referring to? Okay. You ever been to the Onalaska Walmart? In May, we got a complaint from a parent and a young girl at the Walmart in Alaska that involves you. Anything ring a bell to that? Okay. Part where you got chased out of the store?
No.
No? Okay. So we've got video of you getting chased out of Walmart by a mom.
I highly doubt that.
Huh?
No, I don't believe it. Am I under arrest?
I'd like to talk to you a little bit more, but is this your truck?
Definitely not.
No? Is that something you've ever driven?
No, I don't even have a topper on my truck.
Okay. So the incident is that you reported to us that you had grabbed a child buttock in a grocery aisle. No? Okay. So we reviewed video and watched the suspect of this whole thing.
I was placed in the washing machine with the spin mode as punishment. I'm Bastian, just 3.5 years old. On November 25, 2011, I returned home from school with my mother, Charlene Cott. She told my father, Christophe Champenois, about my unruly behavior at school that day, playing too roughly with my classmates. As punishment, my mother locked me in the closet, as she often did. But this time, my father decided on a different punishment. He put me in the washing machine, turned on the spin cycle, and after 30 minutes, he finally opened the door and took me out. My body was blue, I was completely limp, and I wasn't moving. My father called the paramedics, but it was already too late. I had passed away. My family had been monitored by social services since 2006 due to several reports of endangered minors. Yet, no investigation into child abuse was ever conducted on my family. My father, known to public services for prior offenses, was sentenced to 30 years in prison for his crime. My mother was found guilty of complicity and sentenced to 12 years. Stay tuned for more stories. I was taken to the depths of the sea by a hungry shop. My name is Jesse Albergast. At the age of 8, I went with my family to spend a day in Santa Rosa, Iceland, in Florida. My siblings and I were playing happily in the water when suddenly I felt intense pain in my right arm and legs. I looked down and saw a shark attacking me. From that moment on, I was dragged underwater. For a few seconds, I didn't know how to escape. Fortunately, my Uncle Vance quickly ran into the water to save me. He grabbed my arm, pulled it and brought me out of the water. But that was when he realized that the shark had ripped off my arm. The other arm wasn't a state of shock, but my uncle remained calm and decided to protect my family. Calmly, he grabbed the shark and brought it to the surface. Before it, the shark still had my arm in its mouth. A reminder of the act that saved my life that day. After pulling me out of the water, he took me to the beach, where rescuers intervene. He take me to the hospital. I suffered severe injuries to my legs, a brain injury and kidney damage. But thanks to the efforts of the doctors, I was able to recover my arm through several surgeries.
My daughter gave birth to my
For a year in the mid-70s, a county in Michigan was terrorized by a predator who abducted, tortured, and killed children before dumping them in the snow. Here are terrifying serial killers you have never heard of before, part 7, the babysitter. Just the term, the babysitter, is ugh. And the story is so creepy. Between 1976 and 1977, at least 4 children between the ages of 10 and 12 were kidnapped and killed by the babysitter, but it's believed there are more victims out there. This killer has never been caught, and this particular murderer has been known by a few names. The Snow Killer, the Oakland County Child Killer, but the babysitter moniker stuck because the murderer would kind of care for the victims in a way that a babysitter might. Of the 4 known victims, 2 boys and 2 girls, all of them seem to have gone willingly with the killer, making it seem like they trusted the person. Then there's the clothing. All of the victims were fully dressed when they were disposed of in the same clothes they were abducted in. And one victim even had her backpack put back on, even though she'd been missing for 19 days. The second victim, 12-year-old Jill Robinson, was fed regular meals for the 3 days that she was held by the killer. And the 4th victim was fed his favorite food, KFC, and then bathed before being killed. 3 of the victims were suffocated, but that one that I just mentioned, Jill, she was shot at close range, and only the males were sexually assaulted. It's been more than 4 decades since these children were abducted and murdered, and despite years of investigation, a special task force, and dozens of suspects and persons of interest that have been interviewed and looked at by police, no one has ever been charged in this case, and the families of the victims still want answers.
I belated my victims, made hamburgers out of their flesh and sold them on the side of the road. My name is Jossifrey Miffany. Welcome to my cruel world. I was born on March 2, 1955 in Baltimore, USA, and had 5 siblings. My father was an alcoholic and died in a car accident. My mother worked very hard and often had to work double shifts. I became addicted to drugs when I was 18 and kept staying with drug-addicted homeless people. When my then-wife became addicted to crack in 1994, she left me with our common son for another man. For days, I searched for her in vain. Then out of anger and rage,
Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good. What's it like being in here all the time?
What's it like being in here? You have your problems with some staff don't like you, James. Oh, you're a serial killer. You know, biz and stuff. And
Have you got any friends here at all?
no, I stick to myself. I just stick in the cell with myself. I don't even care about going outdoors. There's nothing out there. I don't smoke anymore.
So what's your day like? How does it start?
I spend 24/7 in the cell, watching TV, reading the Bible, writing letters to Dawn, sitting around doing a lot of thinking, preparing, memory, going back in time, memory of everything I've been through in my life, and then just preparing for my death. Get all the tears out of me and stuff so I won't cry and just.
I'm coming, baby, okay? I'm coming.
I blew up my wife with dynamite because she cheated on me. I am Sergeant John Joe Winter, and I blew up my wife with dynamite because she cheated on me. At least she no longer exists on this earth, and she can no longer deceive me. I'm going to tell you my story, and you can give me your opinion in the comments at the end of video. I have always loved my wife, Sarah. We were madly in love, and I did everything for her. One evening, I returned from a mission earlier than expected, surprising her. So I came back discreetly and saw her with another man in the act, and that's when I completely lost control. I left as if nothing had happened. She didn't even hear me. With the help of a military companion, I decided to place 750 kilos of TNT in her car. I spent the night putting everything in the vehicle. The next morning when she took her car, I pressed that button, and the explosion was enormous. It was felt 15 kilometers away. The emergency services arrived and saw the damage that extended over 500 meters wide. I disintegrated her, and then I went to the police. They never found a piece of her body or the car. This is my story. Do you think I went too far?
Do not watch this video if you are easily disturbed. This is this sickening, very recent case of Lily Peters. On the 24th of April 2022, 10-year-old Lily Peters was making her way home from her auntie's house in Wisconsin. She was biking and she was familiar with this route because she'd done it many times before. When she didn't return home that night, her dad reported her missing to police. What transpired was her parents' worst nightmare. Her body was discovered the following day at around 9 a.m. Officers located a bike that ended up being Lily's in the woods near a walking trail at the end of her aunt's street, and her body was discovered shortly after. Disturbing details emerged about Lily's death. She'd suffered blunt force trauma and had been strangled. Her body had then been SA'd. But who on earth would do such a thing to such an innocent little girl? 2 days after she disappeared, police charged Lily's 14-year-old cousin, Carson Peters. He'd allegedly been riding home with Lily when the horrific incident occurred. It's alleged that he punched her in the stomach and attacked her. Now, the case is still ongoing, but he has admitted to the attack. Interestingly, his father is Adam Berger, who is pictured here. He spent 3 years in prison for being a convicted pedophile. Now, Carson's bail is set to $1 million, and if convicted, he could spend life in prison.
This is Julia Kingsley. She was the victim of probably one of the worst crimes I've ever heard of. Trigger warning. There are graphic details about this case that may not be suitable for younger viewers. 22 years ago, when Julia was 8 months pregnant, she was violently abducted by this man, 41-year-old Frank Gaines, and his sister, 38-year-old Elizabeth Gaines. For 4 frantic weeks, the police and volunteers from town searched the San Bernardino Mountains in California looking for Julia Kingsley. Then, on October 3rd, 2001, police finally cornered one of the siblings, Elizabeth Gaines, while she was burrowed deep inside an abandoned school. And what's crazy, they found her coddling a newborn baby, which the police believed was Julia Kingsley's 3-week-old daughter. Now, this is where things get very weird, and one of the reasons why nobody from the Valley Lake Police Department is willing to comment on the story. First of all, Julia Kingsley not only worked for the Valley Lake Police Department as a dispatcher, but she was also married to Paul Kingsley, who was the deputy sheriff at the time. The official report is that Officer Kingsley became obsessed while searching for his wife. It would not work on anything else for over 4 months. He also started drinking and became increasingly depressed. But what happened next, you're not going to believe. Like and subscribe for part 2.
Let's talk about one of the most unsettling true crime cases to come out of Florida. In 2012 in St. Petersburg, Florida, this teacher convinced some of her students that they needed to cut themselves open to rid themselves of demons and then seal the wound. Danielle Harkins was a 35-year-old literacy teacher at a community center and convinced 7 of her students that they had demons inside of them, and the only way to get rid of them was to do that. A group of 6 boys and 1 girl gathered with the teacher near the St. Petersburg Pier at a park and lit a fire. Police reported that the group started to chant and then danced around the fire. Harkins told the teenagers to cut each other to rid themselves of the demons, and then things got much worse. After cutting each other, the students were instructed to somehow seal the wound so that the evil spirits couldn't get back inside their bodies. Danielle tried to use a lighter to cauterize the wounds on the students, but the wind blew it out. She then doused one of the students in perfume and lit him on fire, causing second-degree burns. She cut another one of the students on the neck with a broken bottle piece and then tried to use a small heated-up key to close the wound. None of these students told their parents what happened after the incident, and the only reason it was found out was because one of the 16-year-old boys texted his friend about it, and he told his parents, who told the police. The head administrator for the center where she worked said she had no idea that any of this was going on and called the whole situation bizarre. She said Danielle was a very skilled teacher, very intelligent, and had just recently discovered religion, but she didn't know about the whole demon thing. Harkins was charged with child abuse, but the 7 students are staying loyal to her, and police are afraid that the real atrocities that happened might be much worse than what they already know. I hope those students can find peace.
How did this woman go from looking like this to looking like this?
This is the very heartbreaking case of Sharla Nash. One day in 2009, Sharla received a call from a friend. Her friend's pet chimpanzee named Travis had sadly escaped from the house and was running loose in the neighborhood. Now, Sharla had known this chimp for years, and being as kind as she was, she offered to help lure the chimp back inside. Sharla arrived at her friend's house, not suspecting the danger that awaited her. As she approached Travis, the chimp suddenly turned on her, and with a ferocity that is beyond belief, the 200-pound animal mauled her face and hands, causing devastating injuries. In a complete panic, Sharla's friend made this call.
911, where's your emergency? This is Katie. 221 Rock. Road. What's the problem? Send the police. What's the problem there? The chimp killed my friend.
When police arrived on scene, the chimp was shot, and Sharla was rushed to hospital where she underwent multiple surgeries, including a face transplant. Despite medical intervention, Sharla did end up losing her hands, her eyes, and her nose in the attack. She was also left completely blind and disfigured. Now, this incident completely shook the community. It received widespread media coverage, ultimately raising awareness about the dangers of owning exotic pets. For more 7 Sin crime stories, remember to follow.
I've killed over 160 jihadists with my sniper rifle. My name is Chris Kyle, a former Navy SEAL sniper. I first stepped onto the perilous soils of Iraq as a part of the US invasion in 2003, becoming a part of an elite brotherhood. I was much more than a soldier. I was a protector. My primary role as a sniper was to safeguard my fellow comrades from the looming threats that hung in the distance. My skill with the rifle was not just remarkable, but it was lethal. It didn't take long for the enemy to recognize me, and the Iraqi insurgents soon bestowed upon me a name that echoed fear and respect. They called me the Legend. Throughout my tenure in the chaotic landscapes of Iraq, I found myself ensnared in situations that were fraught with deadly danger. But through each deployment, my confirmed kill count grew, exceeding 160. This wasn't just a number. It cemented my place in the annals of American military history as the most prolific sniper to have ever served. However, in 2009, I found a new purpose. Leaving the Navy SEALs behind, I resolved to aid wounded veterans, intending to alleviate their pain and help them reconcile with their war-torn past. I was determined to help them forget the emotional and physical scars that war had inflicted upon them. Tragically, my life was abruptly and painfully halted on the 2nd of February, 2013. On what should have been a routine day at a Texas shooting range, I was shot dead by a mentally distressed former Marine. My life story may have ended then, but my legacy continues to reverberate through the annals of military history. And thanks to the movie dedicated to me.
I was sentenced to death at just 14 years of age when I was innocent, the youngest person ever sentenced to death in history. My name is George Stinney, and my story inspired the film The Green Mile. Born on October 21, 1929, in South Carolina, United States, my childhood was framed by poverty, racial segregation, and a black family's struggles. In 1944, 2 white girls, Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma, 7, were found murdered near my home. They lay in a water-filled ditch, their heads brutally battered. Unjustly, I was arrested and accused of these horrific crimes. I was grilled for hours without a lawyer or parental guidance, with no motive or evidence implicating me. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and starving, I was coerced into confessing to the murders. My trial began a month later, lasting a mere few hours, where I was assigned an inept lawyer and judged by an all-white jury. The racial bias was so strong that my own family was barred from witnessing the proceedings due to their race. The verdict was swift, death by electrocution. Merely 83 days post my arrest, on June 16, 1944, I was strapped into the electric chair, sitting atop a Bible as the chair was too big for me. At the tender age of 14, I became the youngest individual executed in the United States in the 20th century. It took a heart-wrenching 70 years after my death, in 2014, for my conviction to be overturned, for justice to prevail for my family. It was finally acknowledged that my constitutional rights were grossly violated and the death penalty had been wrongly meted out. My tale stands as a stark reminder of how racial discrimination and prejudice can corrupt the justice system and obliterate innocent lives. My hope lies in my story triggering change, to ensure such a travesty of justice never recurs.
Okay, my sister and her boyfriend told me a really scary story last night, and it's actually a true story, and it freaked me out so bad, and I couldn't wait to tell you guys, so just listen. So after they told me, I did some digging on YouTube, and I found a channel that had the story on it, and it was basically telling it from the guy's perspective that wrote it. And yeah, I'll just read it kind of like the same way that I heard it. And I will link the channel that I found it from below. Okay, I'm just gonna get right into it. I don't care if anyone judges me, but I like to go to the movie theaters alone. My work schedule is all over the place, and I often don't work weeknights. So on a stormy Wednesday night, a night that not many other people would be thinking of driving to the movie theaters, I did just that. I always like avoiding crowds in anything that I do, that's just how I am. It was 2017 and I went to see some low-key movie that probably wasn't at the top of anyone's must-see movie list. I was the only one in the theater, just like I expected. I sat in the center seat of one of the higher-up rows and I put my feet on the seats ahead of me. About 20 minutes into the movie, I noticed someone a few aisles down. I didn't notice them coming in. It was dark in the theater because the scene in the movie at the time was in a dark room. They weren't sitting in the seat like a normal person, though. All I saw of them was the top half of their head peering over the seats in a direction that definitely wasn't towards the screen. It was still too dark to tell if they were looking directly at me or not. But when the movie changed to a brighter background, the whole scene got brighter. Bright enough to see that they were looking basically directly at me. But their face was pale and lifeless looking, and their hair looked messy and wiry. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. I'm an introvert or just a really awkward person, so I didn't really want to ask if anything was wrong. The screen got darker again, and the person behind the chair lowered down completely until I couldn't see them anymore. I couldn't concentrate on the movie now, though, because I was feeling very uncomfortable. Actually quite terrified. I didn't get up, though. I stayed put in my seat. Many scenes in the movie passed, and I forgot about what happened. Almost. Just when I was getting back into the movie, the person's head appeared from behind the seat again. This time much closer, only like 3 rows of seats away from me. I actually let out a really loud yell because it made me jump, and now I could see more details and features in their face. They actually looked lifeless with their eyes motionless and hung open. But still, somehow I couldn't tell if they were looking directly at me or not. Now that I could see better, I noticed it was a man with really long, unkempt hair. I noped the F out of my seat and ran down to the exit. I had to pass the row in which the person was in to get to the exit door. As I passed the row, I looked down it. And while
What? Nothing there, mate. Nothing there. What? There's nothing there.